Hey, yo, what's going on, all my gamers, all my reaction gamers chat? Someone in the Discord submitted this. By the way, if you want to submit videos for me to react to, it's in the description. It's an 18 plus Discord. Throw in as many links as you would like to. I'll probably pick a few and then I'll react to them. Chat, Winnie the Pooh is Lord of the Rings for toddlers. That title gripped me. That is insane. I gotta figure out what this is, chat. Let's watch it. Let's have a good time. Let's watch it.
Odds are, if you clicked on this video, you came in doubtful. You read the title, saw.
I don't even know if I would be doubtful, chat, because I've heard like comparisons to other stories. Like I think Lion King is Macbeth or something. So I'm down to believe it.
And really are just here to see how ridiculous my claim might be. Or perhaps you enjoy hearing me yap about Tolkien. Regardless, I can almost guarantee that by the end of this video, you'll have a newfound respect and understanding for our furry friend without pants. Although distinctly different in many ways, Winnie the Pooh and Lord of the Rings have several foundational commonalities.
Okay.
Both were authored by British men who fought in World War I. Both follow a group of unique characters who band together to tackle different challenges, and both stories are fantastic examples of British comfort fantasy, which is a genre that predominantly came out of the healing from the First World War. So join me as today we examine the friendship.
I want to see more. I should probably look into more books that were made by authors that were in the First World War. I feel like that would be something cool. I don't know. Maybe I'll look into it.
Plot lines, and settings of these two incredible worlds, and find out how the Shire and the 100-Acre Wood might not be so different after all. My name is Gibby, and welcome to Factor Fantasy, a channel where I talk about stuff like this. If you like Harry Potter, I have another channel dedicated to the wizarding world, but over here we focus on all things Tolkien. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of this analysis, I want to of course thank Jason, Joshua, Timothy, Robo Steve, and the rest of my incredible Patreon and YouTube members who help make these videos possible every month. Now sit back, grab a cup of tea, coffee, or whatever you prefer, and enjoy this completely unnecessary but extremely fascinating analysis of Winnie the Pooh and Lord of the Rings.
The epic Pooh.
Let's be honest, when you first hear the comparison, it sounds ridiculous. One story features a dark lord trying to cover the lands in a second darkness, the other features a donkey losing his tail. One has the Battle of the Pelennor Fields and Helm's Deep.
Dude, look at this. Look at this. Especially of how old these movies are. I think this still holds up really, really well. I need to watch the Lord of the Rings all over again. I want to go like marathon it. I know that's like kind of like an all day kind of thing, but I wouldn't mind at all.
The other has a game of Pooh sticks. But in 1978, a science fiction author named Michael Moorcock dropped a bomb on the fantasy community. In his essay, Epic Pooh, he argued that authors like Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, and Richard Adams, who wrote Watership Down, were all guilty of writing corrupted romance. He called their style Anglican Toryism. So what does that mean? Basically,
I don't know.
Moorcock believed that these writers were scared of the modern world. He argued that they hated technology, hated cities, and hated the complexity of
kind of an interesting claim. Huh. I guess, especially if you're making fantasy stuff, I guess that would be interesting. I wonder how they would feel now about fantasy games with like a more modern twist to it, right? Well, I guess they would be more sci-fi. Well, I mean, it's like sci-fi fantasy, right? Because what I have in my mind right now when I think of sci-fi fantasy is something like Wuthering Waves. I'm sorry, chat. I'm the gotcha guy. Is something like Wuthering Waves, where they still have like fantasy stuff with like swords and stuff like that, and like traditional Chinese things, but it's really futuristic looking, right? It's like a sci-fi game at the end of the day, right? You have the Tethys system, you have all the other stuff with like, you know, the what is it, the gourd, where it's like a comm system and it like has a projector and all that, and that would be that's pretty interesting.
Life. In his view, The Lord of the Rings wasn't a challenge to the reader, it was a lullaby. He said it was written to soothe and console the middle class, to tell them that everything was going to be okay if they just stayed in their gardens and ignored the changing world. He famously wrote that The Lord of the Rings is Winnie the Pooh posing as an epic. He looked at the Shire with its tea parties and waistcoats, and he saw it as a cowardly self-protection. To him, Bilbo and...
Hey, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes you just need a little bit of escapism, chat. I think it's fine, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I think escapism is good every once in a while, and for me, it's like all the time. But still, that's I guess maybe, especially around the time of World War I. They're probably like coming off of that war. They're probably like needing some kind of change of pace, or something where they can just forget about what horrific things they just seen.
Frodo weren't heroes. They were just retired colonels, men who wanted to hide from the reality of the 20th century. He called the Shire the Surrey of the mind, basically calling it a boring, rich suburb where nothing bad ever happens. Moorcock's critique is brutal. He essentially is accusing Tolkien of infantilizing his readers. He's
over
saying,
here.
You think you're reading a war story.
I'm over here like trying to see it from a positive light, or at least not a negative light. And I was like, I guess I could kind of see that. That's pretty interesting. And this guy's like, God, Tolkien sucks. I mean, like, it's not, I guess it depends on the angle that you're looking at it. It's not a terrible thing to say, but he definitely didn't mean it in a nice way. He wasn't having a good time with it.
But you're actually reading a bedtime story for babies. But here's where we have to stop and ask a completely different question.
Okay.
Moorcock sees the comfort in these stories as weakness. He sees it as escapism. But what if comfort wasn't a retreat? What if it was a strategy? To understand why two grown men, A.A. Milne and J.R.R. Tolkien, would spend their lives writing about teddy bears and hobbits, we have to look at the world they were trying to escape from.
The shadow of the Somme.
We cannot talk about the 100-Acre Wood or the Shire without talking about the mud, specifically the mud of the Somme. You see, both A.A. Milne and J.R.R. Tolkien belonged to a generation of British men for whom the history of the world was sliced in half. There was before the war, and then there was after the war. Both of these men were writers, scholars, and officers who watched their entire generation get fed into the meat grinder.
And all because someone wanted to slime Archduke Ferdinand. That's crazy, isn't it?
A. Milne, the creator of Pooh, served as a signals officer
They switched him down. They chopped him down, brother, and it all went downhill from there, chat. They switch him down, nephew.
War I. Now, being a signals officer sounds technical and like you're in an office, but it meant he was right there in the chaos, trying to keep up the lines of communication while the world exploded around him. Milne didn't write the gritty, angry poetry of Siegfried Sassoon or Wilfred Owen, but the trauma went just as deep. His experience was visceral. After the war, Milne was, to put it lightly, shell-shocked. His psychological state was characterized by a desperate, almost biological need to reclaim the innocence that had been blown to pieces on the Western Front. It is a critical commonplace to look at the...
Sorry, I was going to talk about that, but I got distracted by what he was saying, but I didn't know that was a term, shell-shocked, that it was a term for PTSD. I only learned, funny enough, about that from The Boys. Because Soldier Boy, right? I love that character. I think Soldier Boy is such a funny character. I think he's really cool. Really, he's a funny character. You know, he's like anti-Captain America. And then he says that first of all, F you, I'm not shell shocked, and that's the first time like someone in a comment in a short like explained that term. That was pretty cool.
And say, oh, that's just
or it's not cool, but it was cool to learn about
Winnie
that.
the Pooh, published in 1926,
Kinda.
and The House at Pooh Corner in 1928,
you know what I'm trying to say.
Through the eyes of a traumatized soldier, the story changes. It isn't just a cute story, it's a reconstruction. He was building a safe world where conflict is low stakes. In the 100-Acre Wood, nobody loses a leg. Nobody gets gassed. The worst thing that happens to you is you get stuck in a rabbit hole or a balloon pops. It was a direct therapeutic inversion of the trench experience. And then you have Tolkien. As many of you know, he was a second lieutenant. He participated in the Somme Offensive of 1916, and he lost multiple best friends, members of his TCBS club, to the war. Tolkien famously hated allegory, as we've discussed on this channel before multiple times, but he admitted that an author cannot, of course, remain wholly unaffected by his life experience. For Tolkien, the war wasn't a subject to be reported on like a journalist, it was a catastrophe that had to be processed through myth. And this is where the two authors converge. They both engaged in what scholars call ironclad pastoralism. It was a common thing for British officers to carry a pastoral commitment into the war, holding onto memories of the English countryside as a mental shield against the horror of the machine guns. For Milne, this shield became the 100-acre wood. It's a hermetically sealed environment where the only dangers are imaginary heffalumps. For Tolkien, it became the Shire. The Shire is an agrarian ideal. It's a place of less noise and more green. Both men...
It does sound like a pretty cool place, the Shire. Like, dude, I really like I really do like fantasy games. Like, fantasy games are just super fantasy. The genre of fantasy, like, it's so cool, man. I don't know, especially in a world where we're always technologically advancing. Something like a Skyrim or the Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. Like, it just seems cool. Riding a horse, going in a carriage, or, going on an adventure, walking down for miles. Like, it seems sick, dude.
Performing an act of literary exorcism. They were using fantasy
and magic
to process the impossible data of industrial warfare.
Recovery, escape, consolation.
This brings us to a specific theory that Tolkien wrote in his essay called On Fairy Stories. He argued that fantasy offers three essential gifts: recovery, escape, and consolation. And when you apply these to Winnie the Pooh, the parallels to Lord of the Rings become undeniable. First, recovery. Tolkien defined this as regaining a clear view of simple things. In the trenches, a wood was a shattered nightmare of splinters and shrapnel. In the Shire or the 100-acre wood, the concept of wood is recovered. It becomes a living, breathing, safe place again. Milne was recovering the childhood innocence the war had stolen from him. Tolkien was recovering a moral universe where individual action still mattered, unlike in the war where you were just a number. Second, there's escape. Tolkien famously clapped back at critics of escapism by saying they were confusing the escape of the prisoner with the flight of the deserter. He argued that the Shire and the wood aren't places to hide, they are places you go to remember what normal looks like when the real world has gone mad. And finally, you have consolation. This is the eucatastrophe.
I was gonna say, I think people just need escapism and stuff like that, right? Because, like, someone who constantly watches the news compared to someone who sometimes watches it and then sometimes watches something else and plays games or something like that. Like, you just need you can't take in all that negativity of the world all the time, dude. It can't be healthy. It can't be, like, we weren't meant to know about something that happened across the world and, like, the atrocities of some wars and things that are going on in the world right now. Like, we weren't meant to know about that, right? And now, unfortunately, at the palm of your hand, you know about everything that terrible that happened that day. And, the world's a scary place, so it's going to be a lot of things, especially hour to hour. So I think escapism is, in a way, necessary.
Sudden, joyous turn that denies universal defeat. Both authors used their worlds to process specific anxieties. For Tolkien, the dead marshes were a direct reflection of the corpse-laden battlefields of northern France. For Milne, the heffalumps and woozles represent a form of anxiety that is manageable. They are the unknown enemy, but in the book, they turn out to be harmless. It's a domestication of fear. So when critics say that Lord of the Rings is reverse-engineered from children's stories, they aren't necessarily wrong. They just miss the point. Both stories are attempts to rebuild a shattered worldview using the building blocks of innocence.
The Fellowship of the Nursery.
Now let's talk about the characters, because if you look closely, the Fellowship of the Ring looks a lot like the residents of the 100-acre wood. Both narratives rely on a decentralized group of male friends. They display deep interdependence, anxiety, and a form of male intimacy that is a hallmark of British bromance literature.
Bromance.
This isn't an accident. This is the platoon.
Chat, tell me it wouldn't sound sick to go out with your bros and just go on an adventure real fast, chat. Chat, what if you just save the world casually one weekend? Doesn't that sound kind of cool? You know what I'm saying? Just one day, get it grouping up a group of your friends and just heading out.
Mentality. The most striking.
I guess that's why people like camping, right? At least that's what I would have thought, like camping where you get away from everything.
Parallel is between the pairings of Pooh and Piglet and Frodo and Sam. Let's look at Pooh and Piglet first. Their friendship is defined by anxiety and reassurance. Piglet is a very small animal. He is constantly terrified. He sees heffalumps everywhere. He is the embodiment of fear. Pooh, on the other hand, is the anchor. He has very little brain, but that's his superpower. His optimism and his solid
superpower is being dumb, chat. Chat, that's kind of my superpower, or at least that's what I hope, because I'm dumb too.
Nature keep Piglet grounded.
I try my best,
Piglet
chat.
offers Pooh intellectual validation. He edits Pooh's poetry, but Pooh offers Piglet physical courage. They are incomplete without each other.
Right.
Now look at Sam and Frodo. It's the same dynamic, just elevated to a life or death scale. Like Piglet, Sam is often driven by fear, initially of the outside world, but his devotion to his master overrides that terror. But here is where the psychological mapping gets a little interesting. In many ways, Frodo is actually the Piglet of the situation. Frodo carries the burden of anxiety and existential dread. The ring is the ultimate heffalump. Frodo is the one who is wounded and weary. He is physically small in the face of immense danger. And Sam? Sam is Pooh. Sam provides the simple, earthy grounding. He worries about cooking, he recites poetry, he is optimistic when things look black. Just as Pooh's simple-mindedness protects him from overthinking, Sam's hobbit sense protects him from the ring's temptation. Sam is the chief hero because, like Pooh, he sees the world simply. Both groups exhibit a form of love called agape, selfless brotherly
I feel like
love.
I've heard that. Agape.
Sam doesn't love the ring, he loves Frodo. That's why he says, I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you.
Yeah,
that
you
is
need
the
your
ultimate
boys,
expression
chat.
of this dynamic. In Winnie the Pooh, this
Always need your boy,
interdependence
chat.
is the primary way they solve problems. When Pooh gets stuck in Rabbit's door, they don't shame him, they wait with him. Tigger needs Rabbit to organize him. Eeyore needs Pooh to notice him. It reflects the reality of a squad in the Great War. You survive because the guy next to you holds you up. This also
he's right. I never really thought of Winnie the Pooh in this way until I realized, until I learned, like, because I didn't know that, right? Obviously, I've known about Winnie the Pooh. Obviously, I was a kid. I grew up, and, you know, I feel like most kids will learn about Winnie the Pooh at some point. I didn't know it was from a World War I veteran, though. And it does kind of open my eyes to more things when you look at it.
Explains the lack of female characters in the
That's why I like history, chat. Or not even history, but just learning about... Actually, yeah, I will say history, because obviously this is kind of like I don't want to say historic, maybe. But like history, obviously World War I is part of history. So learning about history and people in historical events is really interesting, right? For me, at least. Like, that's why, chat, I was terrible at math and I was terrible at science, but one thing I always was good at was history, that's for sure.
Groups. Pooh has Kanga, who is purely maternal. Lord of the Rings, within the Fellowship itself, is entirely male. This reflects the clubbability of the Inklings and the homosocial environments of the trenches. It's a space where men can be gentle with one another without the complications of potential romance. In Pooh, this is holding hands. In Lord of the Rings, it's Sam kissing Frodo's hand. It is masculine tenderness as a response to the hardness of war.
The
setting is the third pillar of this argument. The 100-Acre Wood and the Shire are not just backdrops, they are characters. Winnie the Pooh is anchored in the 500-acre wood of Ashdown Forest in Sussex. It's a landscape of ancient beech trees and gorse. It's a managed wilderness. Wild enough for adventure, but you can always get home for tea. The Shire is anchored in the countryside of Tolkien's youth. It's an agrarian society of watermills and well-tilled fields. Both settings are enclosed gardens. In fact, the word paradise comes from the Old Persian for fenced place. The wood is enclosed by the imagination of the child. It's a safe bubble. The Shire is enclosed by the rangers and the magic of the Old Forest. It's a bubble of peace in a world of war. And maps play a huge role in both. You have the map of the 100-Acre Wood drawn by E.H. Shepard and the map of Middle-earth drawn by Christopher Tolkien. Both feature blank spaces that represent the unknown. In Pooh, the North Pole is a destination of discovery. In Lord of the Rings, the blank spaces are where the dragons live. Moorcock criticized
that's cool.
this.
I didn't know that.
He called it the Surrey of the mind, arguing that it teaches people to stay in the suburbs where it's safe. But within the context of the comfort fantasy, the Shire represents the moral baseline. In Pooh, the wood is the world as it should be. In Lord of the Rings, the Shire is the world as it used to be or is fighting to remain.
Hobbit versus Superman.
The most profound link between Milne and Tolkien, and the reason that Lord of the Rings works as grown-up Pooh, is their shared rejection of the Nietzschean Übermensch. In the early 20th century, the philosophy of the Superman was gaining traction. The idea that a superior individual could transcend conventional morality to impose his will on the world. This eventually found its horrific distortion in Nazi ideology. The Superman creates his own values. He rejects the slave morality of kindness.
My dumbass thought it meant like actual Superman. I don't know why I thought that. I was like Clark? Like the big blue Boy Scout? Apparently not. More like the Red Skull than the blue Superman.
Humility. Tolkien and Milne looked at the Superman and said, no thanks. They fundamentally rejected the great man theory of history. Milne's heroes are stuffed toys. They're fragile. They're stitched together. They are fundamentally dependent on Christopher Robin. There is no power fantasy in Pooh, except maybe Tigger, and he's usually causing trouble. Pooh is pretty much the anti-Superman. He doesn't transcend morality, he embodies the simplest morality of kindness.
He's just being out there, dude.
Tolkien took this and turned it into a mythic struggle. Sauron is the ultimate Übermensch. He is a being of pure will and order. He wants to reorganize the world according to his design. The ring is the temptation to become the Übermensch.
Sorry, Chad, I just keep looking at like some of the visuals, which from the movie. I don't know. It's been a long time since I actually seen Lord of the Rings, but the visuals from like that movie is super cool, bro.
Instead of the Superman, though, both authors elevate the little person. The Hobbit is physically small. He prefers food to fighting. He is invisible to the wise. The bear of very little brain is defined by his limitations, yet he succeeds because of his purity of heart. This is the heroism of the ordinary. In the context of World War I, this was the, quote, Tommy, the average soldier who endured the worst of circumstances not for glory, but for his friends. The little man doesn't seek to change the world, he seeks to preserve his corner of it. Think about Frodo's victory. Frodo doesn't defeat Sauron through strength of arms. He doesn't out-magic the necromancer. He defeats him by enduring. It's a passive heroism of suffering. Now think about Pooh's wisdom. Pooh doesn't solve problems through logic like Rabbit or literacy like Owl. When they seek the North Pole, Pooh finds it not by calculation, but by accident and simple observation.
You know, I was having this feeling as well recently, is I kind of, and this might go back, again, this goes back to the games that I play. You know, you have Wuthering Waves where the rover is like the god of the world who just lost his memories. Administrator in Arknight's Enfield, I don't know what, but he lost his memories too, and he's kind of important. He like made the whole Enfield Industries, you know, Genshin Impact. You're like the travelers who are, you know, spoiler alert, the Descenders and stuff like that. And it's kind of why I really liked and was really drawn to something like Zelda Zone Zero, where at the beginning you were just kind of whoever you chose, either Bell or Weiss, and you just kind of ran a video store. Like, it felt so slice of life, and like the biggest problem was maybe you get scammed or you're getting hacked and your identity is getting revealed. Instead of trying to stop the end of the world or something, or the void or the whatever is happening, and you know what I'm saying, and you got to go help the archons and stuff like that. Like, I do like that stuff, don't get me wrong. This is why I still continue to play this game and why I've played Genshin Impact for 6 years. But, you know, something on a smaller scale, I feel like, is always good, which is why I loved NTE and why I can't wait for that game to come out, because I did get into the beta because I am a creator for him. Something like that, where it's just, you don't need to save the world. You could save like a block. Right? Like a neighborhood is probably good. I feel like Ananta will probably be the same when that comes out, or maybe Silver Palace. But I like large scale stuff is good, but I do resonate more with small scale stakes.
It is important to distinguish this little man from the modern anti-hero, like Han Solo or Walter White. The little man isn't morally ambiguous or more so just morally wrong. He is morally absolute, but physically insignificant. The Ubermensch changes the world through will and power. The little man saves the world by refusing to change and refusing the power offered to him. Pooh is essentially a proto-hobbit. His hum-hum-de-dum is the precursor to the Hobbit walking song. It is the assertion of existence and joy in the face of a large, confusing world. So let's go back to Michael Moorcock. Was he right? Is The Lord of the Rings just Winnie the Pooh for adults and Winnie the Pooh, The Lord of the Rings for toddlers? The answer is yes, but it's not an insult. It's actually the highest compliment you could pay the foundational grammar of British post-war fantasy. Because if Lord of the Rings is Pooh for adults, it means that even in the face of Mordor, in the face of the atomic bomb, the concentration camp, and the mechanized slaughter of the 20th century, we refuse to let go of the nursery's wisdom. It's an admission that the values of the nursery, kindness, friendship, a warm fire, and a good pot of honey, aren't weak. They are the only things worth fighting for. They are the only things that can fight the great men of history who want to burn the world down. Ultimately, the Hobbit is just a grown-up Pooh Bear. He has lost some stuffing, he has gained a sword, he has seen the face of war and carried a burden no bear should ever have to carry. But his core desire is the same. He just wants to sit down before a fire with his friends. And in a world like ours, preserving that simple joy is the most heroic thing you could possibly do. The Lord of the Rings is indeed Winnie the Pooh for adults, because it suggests that the only way to defeat the necromancer is to remember the lessons of the nursery. And in the same way, Winnie the Pooh is the Lord of the Rings for toddlers. It prepares the smallest among us for the biggest of adventures, proving that you don't need a sword to be brave, sometimes you just need a friend. But what do you think? Do you agree with Michael Moorcock that this is—
I think this also is such a terrible, how do I say this? This is one of the bad results of people being isolated more now, is you just don't have a friend or a friend group to lean on. You might have, like, you know, people who are online, chronically online, you might have a little bit more. Like me, myself, I have a group of friends that, you know, they don't really make content. They're just my boys from, like, day one that since, like, the day I've been on the internet, they've always been my group of friends. You know, some have tried content, but not really. And they're the people that I can always rely on and have always been there, where I have had a ton of VTuber friends, and to this day, a lot of them aren't around anymore. Right? And if I didn't have that group of friends, dude, I don't know what I would be into. I like being lonely is terrible, dude. You gotta have your boys and you gotta have a core group of friends that will hold you down. But like I said, that's what kind of sucks about people being isolated. And a lot, you know, nobody going out anymore. Like, I live in the house that I live in. I've never met my neighbors. You know, people aren't going out and meeting their neighbors anymore. It's a depressing thing, chat. But you know what? As long as you got your boys to hold you down, that's all that really matters.
All just a cowardly retreat? Or do you agree that the Hobbit's connection to the nursery is actually its greatest strength? And which Pooh character do you think—
I probably think it's a pretty big strength. Because hold on, let me hear that.
Hobbit's connection to the
just so I
nursery
can think about that.
is actually its greatest strength. And which Pooh character do you think matches
one more time.
Michael Moorcock that this is all just a cowardly retreat? Or do you agree that the Hobbit's connection to the nursery is actually its greatest strength?
I think it's its probably its greatest strength, right? Because you can also, I feel like people can enjoy both at whatever age, which I think is important. That means it's really well written, right? If an adult can enjoy Winnie the Pooh and a kid can enjoy Lord of the Rings, I think that just shows how well they were both written.
And which Pooh character do you think matches up best with each member of the Fellowship?
Oh God, that would be
in the comments below.
I would have to rewatch it before I answer that, Chad. I can't do that right now.
And subscribe and check out the playlist for more Tolkien analysis. Have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video.
That was great. I love that video. I especially after this one video I just reacted to, I needed to just sit down, decompress, and just think about something else. And that was great, dude. I love that. That was such a great video. Chat, do you like Lord of the Rings, chat? Where are my Lord of the Rings heads in the chat? Chat, who in the gang likes Lord of the Rings? I hope all of you. It's okay if you don't. It's fine. But chat, let me know how you guys feel. Come like, subscribe, and I'll catch you gamers in the next one. Bye.